The Hungaroring in Budapest is described as Monaco without the walls, and it has a knack of throwing up unexpected results. So we head back to Budapest, what used to be the final race before the mid-season break, but this year it is no longer. That honour goes to Spa, which has moved from opening the second half of the season to closing the first half of the season, which means Budapest is no longer the final race before everyone goes on their summer holidays in Formula One. And it's a tight and twisty track. It's an interesting circuit, and like I said in the intro, it's got a knack for throwing up unexpected results. It has provided several first-time winners. Damon Hill took his first win there. Jenson Button took his first win there. Heikki Kovalainen took his first win there. It's a track where things, weirdly enough, seem to happen, even though it's famed for not being very favourable towards overtaking. Although last year we saw that it's possible to overtake with the new generation of car, because Max Verstappen won from, I think it was 9th or 10th on the grid, even though he spun mid-race. And Red Bull will again be favourites. Talks of new side pods. I mean, the zero pod concept going on the Red Bull and then working would just be the ultimate kick in the teeth for Mercedes and Mercedes fans. But apparently it's more of the water slide Aston Martin sort of approach. And you know, they've won every race this season, so don't expect that to change. But the Hungaroring is a circuit, like I said, where weird things can happen. A poorly timed safety car. I was watching one of the races back yesterday, and you know, if a safety car comes out at the wrong time and you're on the pit straight as the race leader, everyone else behind you could box and get a massive undercut behind the safety car. But the Red Bull, in Verstappen's hands at least, has a big performance advantage, so I'm not sure that even would be too much of a problem. The question, I suppose, is who's going to be their closest challengers, because we've now got apparently 4 teams who can challenge potentially with Red Bull. Will McLaren be at the front again? They showed very, very well in Silverstone, qualifying 2nd and 3rd on the grid and even leading the race in the early laps with Lando Norris. And Oscar Piastri, like I mentioned just now with the unlucky safety car, should have probably been on the podium. No potential about it. He really should have been on the podium, all things being normal. But the safety car intervention helped Lewis Hamilton get ahead of the young Australian. I don't know whether McLaren are going to be there. This, I suppose, will be a bit of an acid test as to whether their car has moved forward enough. But even if they're not, let's say, second fastest, if they're in the mix with Ferrari and Aston and Mercedes and around their pace, that shows that their car is probably working fairly well across a broad spectrum of layouts. And the Budapest circuit is a circuit that you need lots of downforce for that middle sector. So let's see how they go. And with high temperatures predicted, that might help some teams and it might hurt some teams. It might hurt McLaren. They were benefiting from the cooler temperatures at Silverstone. Now, if it is hot, Ferrari's tyres are just going to melt. We've seen what their tyre preservation is like this season. And they've got the pace in terms of one lap pace, but the car doesn't seem to work particularly well over a race distance. Aston Martin appeared to have stalled in development, and just how compliant is the Mercedes going to be? It seems to lurch from being uber competitive to not really feeling it between races. It's been described as another diva, but you've got to work with what you've got and make the best of it. So I suppose in that case, Mercedes are doing what they can with it. They're currently 2nd in the championship, and they've got to keep that momentum going. And I suppose they've got the most effective driver pairing out of all of those 4 teams that are chasing Red Bull in Lewis Hamilton and George Russell, because you've got Alonso scoring the bulk of the points for Aston Martin. Ferrari are probably not maximising their partnership with their car. McLaren have only just come onto the scene in that respect, so Mercedes are still well set to be 2nd in the championship. And while all that's happening at the front, the biggest story is probably at the back of the grid. It's the return of the Daniel Ricciardo, the honey badger, the smiling assassin is back. And I'm really happy about this. I didn't think Ricciardo deserved to be left out of Formula One. I know it was his choice not to join Haas or Williams or anyone this season, take some time off. But he's proven that he is ready. Well, it's proven to him that he's ready to get back into the car. He's still hungry to be a Formula One driver. Of course, he's going to return in Hungary, puns aside. But it's really good to see him back on the grid. Unfortunately, it is in the AlphaTauri, which isn't particularly competitive, but let's see what he can get out of it. If he can perform well in that, if he can beat Yuki Tsunoda, and if Sergio Perez is having a tough time still, then the door might be open at Red Bull for a return there. A classic previous race at the Hungaroring happened in 2014. And we were talking about Daniel Ricciardo just now, and it's remembered for a memorable win from the Australian. He put in what became his trademark, his late braking overtakes, and he did it on two of the sport's very best in Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso. And there was tension at Mercedes as it all started to bubble up when Hamilton declared that he would not slow down for Nico when teammate Nico Rosberg was on a differing strategy. It started in wet conditions, there was a safety car, it was a tricky race, there was lots of different strategies, but in the end Daniel Ricciardo pulled off those late overtakes to win the race, and it was just, I watched it back yesterday, it was superb. My driver to watch in Budapest this weekend is none other than 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton. And not only is he a 7-time world champion, he is a master of the Hungaroring. 8 victories, 8 poles around the circuit, and a lot of them have come in the Mercedes hybrid dominance era. But in 2009 he won that race with a McLaren that probably wasn't worth being on the top step of the podium. He won there at the first time of asking in 2007. He's been on pole position so many times around that circuit, the most successful driver around the Hungaroring. Last year he finished second on the podium, having started 7th following a DRS issue in qualifying, while teammate George Russell started on pole position. Even when the car isn't great around the Budapest circuit, Lewis Hamilton simply finds a way to excel. A couple of championship battles to look out for this weekend in Budapest. The first one I'm going to pick is the battle for second in the Drivers' Championship. Sergio Perez, Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton are all in with a shout, and Sergio Perez really needs to rekindle that early season qualifying form that saw him qualifying strongly on the grid. The Mexican has 156 points, Alonso 137 and Hamilton 121, and a couple of dodgy weekends for any of those three drivers, coupled with some strong results for the others, and the whole situation can really change very, very quickly, and there's still a lot of races left to go. And my other championship fight to watch is also a 3-way battle. It's Williams, Haas and Alfa. I'm not convinced any of them will be strong this weekend in Budapest. It might just be a battle of who makes the fewest errors on circuit. And so then to my predictions, starting with pole position for the Hungarian Grand Prix. He's going to do it again. It's Max Verstappen. He took his very first pole position there in 2019. It didn't come out as a victory. That went to Lewis Hamilton that year. But I think the Dutchman is going to put that right this year, converting pole into the victory. And he's going to finish ahead of Lewis Hamilton for the second year in a row in Hungary. And third on the podium at last is Sergio Perez. I know he got a podium in Austria, but this time he's going to do it from a sensible qualifying position. He's not going to have to recover all the way through the field during the race. The Red Bulls are going to be dominant, I think, especially in Verstappen's hands. Hamilton, as I said, is a master around this circuit. He can get something out of that car, but don't discount Fernando Alonso ever. I'm not sure where the Aston Martin's going to fall out in all of this because their development, like I said, seems to have stalled. Perez needs a kick up the backside, really, and Daniel Ricciardo being back on the grid is that. So hopefully he can pull off a better weekend and get the result that he needs. But one thing that's going to affect qualifying, not just for Perez, but for everybody, is the first trial of the hard, medium, soft mandatory use in Q1, Q2, Q3. So Q1 will be hard tyres, Q2 will be mediums, and Q3 will be softs. So if it's cooler on Saturday, any cars that struggle to get heat into their tyres, Mercedes, are going to struggle. The Red Bull tends to struggle getting heat into the front tyres, but there's lots of corners around the Budapest circuit where you can generate tyre temperature. So Red Bull won't be found out there. Mercedes should be alright. If it's warm, then they'll be okay. But teams like Haas and Ferrari that use their tyres really aggressively could be in a bit of trouble, especially on race day. So that's going to be a really interesting thing to look out for. That brings an end to my preview and my predictions. Let me know in the comments who your driver to watch is and who you think is going to win this weekend's Hungarian Grand Prix. Or maybe we'll make it a bit more interesting. Who do you think is going to be best of the rest behind Verstappen and possibly Perez if he finishes second? If you enjoyed this video, give it a nice big thumbs up, give it a like, and share it with other people if you think they would enjoy it too. Subscribe for more Grand Prix content, and thank you very much for watching.